Welcome back. As you know, I'm Eli the Computer Guy here for the Daily Blob, where we say always make sure to go out there and sell the sizzle, not the steak. You hear that, Lutnick? Lutnick! Yeah, it's sell the sizzle, not the steak. Why do you have a pile of shit over there? No, I don't want to buy a pile of shit. Lutnick, why are you trying to sell me a pile of shit? That has nothing to do with sizzles or steak. That is literally a pile of shit, Lutnick. Nobody wants a pile. I think I see the problem here. You know, I get that argument, right? This whole thing like, well, Eli, it's the modern world. You know, it's not this whole sizzle and steak thing. And then you got like the people like Lutnick, and they're just coming in with piles of shit and trying to sell it to you. And then they don't understand why that's not working. Anyways, the modern world. So we have this whole anti-China thing going on. And China, it's gonna be as a surprise to you, seems to be getting tired of it, right? The thing that I find fascinating is, God bless Trump. He says it. He has a whole social media platform, and he says exactly what he means on the social media platform for the entire world to hear, right? Other politicians, they might do something, but they don't actually say it out loud. Our boy fucking screams it from the rooftops, right? So we heard this like with H20, that was like with the Lutnick, right? So, so Nvidia is supposed to be able to sell the H20s to AI GPUs from Nvidia to China. And then Lutnick comes out and says, yeah, haha. And he starts laughing about it. Where, yeah, they're going to be able to buy the fourth best GPUs. Like, Jesus Christ. And then Lutnick starts talking about addicting China, which, you know, just don't. Just... Fuck me. Stop talking about addicting China to anything. Anyways, and then Trump comes out, and he's like negotiating this deal with Nvidia so that they can buy enhanced, I forget how he said it. It was like negatively enhanced GPUs. So Nvidia can sell H100 GPUs that are negatively enhanced to China, again, so that we can addict China to our GPUs. Because this is apparently something all these people are saying. So anyways, it should come as rather no surprise that China is kind of getting tired of this crap. So I've talked about this before with Huawei. Huawei has their Ascend GPUs. They're producing those. China in general is trying to produce many other processors and many other chips. But it does seem to be curious that China, though, from the government up, is now trying to limit the use of Nvidia chips in China. So the idea being, right, with Lutnick, right, brainiac of the Trump administration right there, Lutnick is like, yeah, well, China is so desperate for our GPUs, they'll buy whatever crap we sell them. That's why he's lugging around those bags of shit everywhere. And, you know, China's actually getting tired of it at this point. And they're now actually recommending and telling their companies not to buy the shit. Don't buy the sizzle. Don't buy the steak. And sure as fuck, don't buy the shit. China pumps the brakes on Nvidia H20 GPUs. So apparently, Nvidia has like 1 million of those things produced or in production. And China is now recommending that their companies don't use them. What? Surprising. As reported by Bloomberg, China has urged local companies to avoid using Nvidia cut-down H20 processors. While there was no mention of an outright ban, the guidance, was particularly strong for those working in the government sector. Originally designed to comply with U.S. export controls, the H20 offers less computing power compared with flagship variants like the H100 or Blackwell chips, yet remains the most powerful AI accelerator Nvidia is legally permitted to ship into China. Beijing has two major concerns. First, there is concern that Nvidia chips may have location tracking and remote shutdown capabilities. And it does appear that U.S. intelligence agencies are putting location tracking onto AI chips that may or may not be headed to China. So I've talked about that before. So that's one of China's concerns with this. Because one of the things you have to be thinking about like these AI chips, especially the higher power ones, even these H20 things, is basically where are they getting put, right? So China is a huge country. China is a huge country. And the US doesn't have a great idea what the hell's going on with China to begin with. And so one of the things is if you have location tracking technology that can send out where something is located, that might start basically showing where they have, you know, valuable assets, valuable military assets, valuable economic assets, that type of deal. Think about this with warfare. Right? When we bombed the ever-loving shit out of Baghdad back in the day, things we went after was telecoms exchanges, right? So if you go into war, you don't simply blow up the tanks and the aircraft carriers and that type of deal. You also try to destroy things like the communication systems, that type of thing. And so think about it. If you're purchasing a lot of these AI GPUs or whatever, and you install them somewhere, if they have some kind of mechanism in there to be able to release where that location is, that may then light up that geographic area on the map for the United States to realize, oh, something important is happening there. Right? 10,000 GPUs just got spun up in this particular regional area within the past 30 days, that probably means something significant is going on there. So obviously, they don't want to deal with that crap. Surprise, surprise. Second, China, like many other parts of the world, is concerned about processor sovereignty and has been encouraging Chinese companies to move away from Western technology in favor of homegrown solutions. For example, the most domestically produced Huawei 910C AI chip is significantly faster than the Nvidia H20 and compares favorably to the Nvidia H100. How true that actually is a bit of a question. I just did a video talking about DeepSeek trying to train their R2 version using the Huawei's Ascend chips, and apparently that did not work out too well. They ended up having to go to Nvidia. But I do kind of think it is interesting here with the Chinese government trying to force basically their companies not to use Nvidia GPUs and to pressure them to use Huawei GPUs. Why this can be very significant is like when you hear about DeepSeek, right? DeepSeek is supposed to be that article that proves China man is behind, right? China cannot not catch up to the United States for some reason. One of the things to consider, though, is if DeepSeek is training their R2 model, right? So they already have their R1 model out. The R2 model, obviously, is going to be larger and more sophisticated, the whole 9 yards, right? So it is understandable with a larger cutting-edge model that the Huawei GPUs, AI systems, might not be up to snuff. One of the things you do have to consider, though, is how many projects out there are not at the caliber of DeepSeek R2, right? There are smaller things. Either they're doing inference or they're training smaller models, that type of deal. And so one of the things, right, if you're an IT professional, you know what you want. We all know what we want. We all know what our wish list is. This is what we want. And then there's always that time. There's always that time when you go to the CEO, when you go to the executive, and you're like that little kid, you're like, do I finally get what I want for Christmas? Oh! And you give them a list of the crap you want, and then they say no. And you're like, what? And it's like, that shit's too expensive. You're like, but that's what we need. They're like, okay, well, here's the deal. Your budget is half what you're asking for. So make sure the systems function for half what you're asking for. And you're like, fuck, right? And so what do? You go out and you buy the resources which will adequately solve your problems, right? So again, if I'm going to buy a server, on the CEO's dime, I want my CPU, let's just say CPU utilization. I want my average CPU utilization at like 20%. Because, right, I'm the IT guy, right? If CPU utilization ever hits 100%, and things really start going wonky because of it, I'm the one that's going to get called in at midnight to solve the problem. So the farther I'm away from the 100% mark, the better my life is going to be. So I want the CEO to buy a $20,000 server where I figure, based off of average load, we're never going to go above 20% CPU utilization. So even if a fucking, infinite, true loop gets inserted, even if something else gets stupid happens, it goes from 20% utilization to 30% utilization. Right? I walk in the morning, I see the activity monitor, I go, CPU utilization is now at 30%. It is higher than it should be. Okay, well, I'm gonna go talk to Bob for a little while. And then when I feel like I'm awake, the caffeine is kicked in, then I'm gonna come and try to figure out what's going on. And I can do that. La 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 la. Because who the fuck cares, right? CPU utilization is 30% versus 20%. Nobody cares, right? Here's the thing. You go to the boss, and you're like, I want $20,000 for this server. They go, fuck, what? No. We're gonna give you $5,000 for that server. What? No, but we can't do it for $5,000. You go through this whole song and this whole dance, and you get out with $8,000. You got $8,000 for a server. All right, so you go and you spec it out, you do the storage array, you do the CPU and everything else, and you find you can build out a server, and you figure that particular server, it will give you an average CPU utilization of, let's say, 50%, maybe 60%. If you get a spike, it shouldn't get you above 70% or 80%, at least the old system administrator route. That was when you actually started to get concerned. So, right, basically you're within bounds. You're within bounds. You don't have a lot of room if something stupid happens, but frankly, you got enough room, right? That's what I think is kind of interesting here with this whole China thing, and then pushing them to use Huawei, the IT folks there to use Huawei GPUs, is even if Nvidia is the best, even let's just put on the table that Nvidia is the best price per everything else. But here's the thing, the Chinese government is coming in and saying, patriots, people who believe in China, don't fucking buy Nvidia. Right, that starts to get a little nerve-wracking. Like, this is China. It's like, well, I would prefer to buy Nvidia. I know if I buy Nvidia, right, use resource constraints, all of that kind of stuff is going to be completely fine. No issues at all. But if I buy 1,000 Nvidia GPUs or 100 Nvidia GPUs, I'm going to be on the radar of the government. The government is going to be wondering why I need so many Nvidia GPUs. And I don't want to be on the radar of the government. So if I use Huawei GPUs, I don't get quite the performance, right? I don't get quite that resource cushion that I would prefer. But yeah, fuck it, it's fine. It's probably fine, right? Yeah, fucking just buy Huawei. And now think about this, right? We talk about this in the technology world. We talk about this in the nation state world. What happens is those decisions are made at scale. What happens when IT professionals in China know they can, they are technically allowed to buy Nvidia, but if they buy Nvidia, they're going to have some eyeballs on them. And so they just look at it and they say, honestly, Huawei's fine enough. I got enough shit going on. I got an argument with my wife. My kids making fentanyl to send to the United States. I got a lot of things going on in my life. I don't really need the government taking an eyeball at what I'm doing. So yeah, Huawei is fine. And think about that. Think about how that varies. I'm not sure subtle is the right word. But think about how that is just putting that pressure to start shifting folks over to that AI stack. I don't know. It'll be a curious thing to think about going forward. It's also interesting. I talked about this in another video. I was reading House of Huawei. If you have not read House of Huawei, about 20% into it. House of Huawei is a very good book. But one of the things to be thinking about this too is, again, the Chinese government really wants their technology sold to the rest of the world. So, right? Think about this as a patriotic deal. Right, as an American, do I feel like this is a patriotic responsibility to sell Nvidia? if every time I sell an Nvidia graphics card, I fucking fly the American flag and shoot off some fireworks or something. No, of course I don't give a shit. Whatever. But one of the interesting things, though, right, with a lot of this, and especially with economic independence and the rest of it, selling Chinese equipment to the rest of the international market, I mean, that's a big flag. That's a big thing to fly. So also think about that pressure to start selling more of that on the world stage. I'll be curious to see how that pans out. Right? We create export control rules, tax the shit out of our AI companies, and require them to GIMP their products, and then our intelligence agencies add tracking mechanisms to them. So that's our competitive environment. Or you have China that's just like, hey, it's your duty as a Chinese person to use more of these GPUs. I don't know which sales strategy do you think is going to win at the end of the day? Oh, people are like, Eli, why are you such a China shill? Why are you just such a CCP shill? I'm not a CCP shill. I would like our government to stop shooting American citizens in the nuts. Asking the American government to stop shooting American citizens in the nuts is not being a CCP shill. Stop. Anyways, so what do you think about this? What do you think about China saying no to Nvidia hardware? What do you think about them putting pressure on their own companies to use native hardware? And where do you think that is going to go? Put your thoughts down below. Whether you like these videos, give us a thumbs up. You dislike them, give us a thumbs down. Say I'm amazing. Say I'm a moron. It's the modern world. All that matters is that interaction. It's not about building a better world. It's not about helping people. It's not about striving for your family or your society or your neighbors. No, it's all about screaming. It's all about screaming. Yeah, I wonder how that's going to work out. So the American economy is based on all of us getting more and more angry and screaming at each other. And the Chinese economy is built off of building shit. I wonder which economy is going to win. I wonder which economy is going to win. Anyways, see y'all later.